Danny heard his father's footsteps getting closer through the forest. Amy stood on the path below, her face pale with worry. There was nowhere to hide, no way to explain this. In seconds, his father would climb up and find a dragon in his treehouse. Greg Fletcher appeared through the trees, looking annoyed rather than angry. He was carrying his field scanner and wearing his work boots, which meant he'd come straight from the lab. "Danny, you can't just turn off your communicator," his father called up. "Your mother was worried. We've been trying to reach you for an hour." Danny climbed down the ladder quickly, hoping to keep his father on the ground. "Sorry, Dad. The battery died." Greg looked at him with the expression that meant he knew Danny was lying but wasn't sure about what. "The battery was full this morning. I checked it myself. Maybe I forgot to charge it yesterday," Danny said, his mind racing for better excuses. "Danny." His father's voice got quieter, which was always worse than yelling. "What's going on? You've been acting strange all week. Missing meals, taking medical supplies, spending every moment out here. Your mother thinks you found an injured animal you're trying to help." Amy stepped forward. "Dad, maybe we should just go home and—" "Amy, please. I'm talking to your brother." Greg turned back to Danny. "If you found something hurt, that's fine. But we need to know what it is. Some of the creatures here carry parasites. You could get sick." Danny looked up at his treehouse. Through the gaps in the polymer walls, he could see movement. Ember was awake and probably listening to everything. "It's not from here," Danny said quietly. His father frowned. "What do you mean? Did someone's pet escape from the outpost?" "No. I mean, it's not from New Haven. It's not from anywhere humans have been." Greg's expression changed from annoyed to concerned. "Danny, what did you find?" There was no good way to say it. Danny took a deep breath. "Promise you won't freak out. I'm a scientist. I don't freak out. I assess situations calmly and rationally. You freaked out when Amy brought home that mud crawler and it ate your research notes. That was different. Those notes were irreplaceable." Greg ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Danny, please, just tell me what's up there." Danny looked at Amy. She nodded, which meant she thought he should tell the truth. Danny had learned to trust his sister's instincts about these things. "It's a Dracari," Danny said. "A dragon. From Drakmir. It's hurt, and it was dying, and I couldn't just leave it." His father stared at him for several long seconds. Then he laughed. But it was the nervous kind of laugh that meant he didn't think it was funny. "Danny, that's not possible. The Dracari don't leave their system. They've never been seen outside their space." "Well, one of them is in my treehouse right now." Greg's smile faded. "This isn't a joke?" "No, Dad. I've been taking care of it for a week. Its wing was broken, and it was hurt all over. But it's getting better now." His father looked up at the treehouse, then back at Danny, then at Amy, who nodded to confirm the story. Greg's hand moved to his communicator. "Dad, don't," Danny said quickly. "Please, just come see it first. It's not dangerous. It's scared and alone, and it needs help." "Danny, the Dracari killed the crews of 2 exploration ships. They're classified as hostile. If there's one here, I have to report it. Immediately." "Just look first," Danny pleaded. 5 minutes. If you still want to call Commander Grant after that, I won't argue." Greg stood there, obviously torn between following protocol and trusting his son. "No way," Amy said. "I want to see the dragon too." "Amy." "Dad, Danny's been going up there alone for a week, and he's fine." "I'll be fine too." Greg looked like he wanted to argue but recognized the stubborn expression on his daughter's face. It was the same expression his wife got when she'd made up her mind about something. "Fine, but both of you stay behind me." They climbed the ladder together, Greg going first. Danny's heart pounded as his father's head rose above the floor level. He heard his father's sharp intake of breath. Ember sat in the corner, watching them with alert golden eyes. The dragon had grown stronger over the past week. The wounds were healing, and the scales had regained some of their luster. In the morning light streaming through the gaps in the walls, Ember looked almost majestic, despite the injuries. Greg pulled himself fully into the treehouse and stood there, frozen. Amy scrambled up behind him and gasped. "Oh, wow," she whispered. "Danny, you didn't say it was so pretty." Ember's eyes moved from Greg to Amy to Danny. The dragon's body tensed, ready to flee or fight if necessary. Danny could see the fear in those intelligent eyes, the uncertainty. "Dad," Danny said carefully, "this is Ember. Ember, this is my father. He's a scientist. He studies living things." Greg hadn't moved. He was staring at Ember with the expression he got when he encountered something that challenged everything he thought he knew. Danny had seen that look before, when they discovered that New Haven's plants used a completely different type of photosynthesis than Earth plants. "Remarkable," Greg finally breathed. "The scale structure is iridescent at the molecular level. The wing configuration suggests powered flight, even at this size. The eyes indicate high intelligence and possibly color vision beyond human range." "Dad, you're doing the scientist thing." "Sorry. Greg took a hesitant step forward. Ember's head pulled back slightly. Let her. I'll say. Let her. Ember, may I come closer?" Danny realized his father was asking Ember's permission, not his. Greg knelt down slowly, making himself smaller and less threatening. It was exactly what Danny had done on the first day. "I'm not going to hurt you," Greg said softly. "I'm just amazed to meet you." Ember watched him carefully. Then, to Danny's surprise, Ember reached out and picked up the tablet, which was still lying on the floor. With careful movements, Ember pulled up one of the drawings that explained being cast out from the other dragons. Greg leaned closer, studying the crude images. His eyes widened as he understood the story they told. "You ran away," he said. "Or they forced you out. You're a refugee." Ember made that deep rumbling sound that Danny had learned meant yes. Amy couldn't contain herself anymore. She stepped around her father and sat down cross-legged in front of Ember. "I'm Amy. I'm Danny's sister. Can I touch your scales? They're so beautiful." "Amy, careful," Greg warned. But Ember extended one foreleg toward Amy, offering. Amy gently touched the scales, her face lighting up with wonder. "They're warm. And smooth. They feel like they're humming." Greg sat down fully, his scientific mind clearly racing. 7 days. Since the storm ended. And it hasn't tried to hurt you at all? "No, never. It let me treat its wounds. It eats the food I bring. We've been trying to communicate." Greg looked at Ember with new eyes. "This changes everything. If the Drakari can be peaceful, if they're capable of seeking help from another species." He trailed off, thinking through implications. "Dad, you're not going to call Commander Grant, are you?" His father was quiet for a long moment. "Danny, this is bigger than us. There's a Drakari on a human colony world. That has massive political and military implications. But Ember's not a threat. Ember came here for help, not to hurt anyone." "I know. But that doesn't mean the military will see it that way." Greg looked at Ember, who was watching their conversation intently. "I need to tell your mother. And then we need to figure out what to do." "Can we wait?" Danny asked. "Just a little longer? Until Ember is stronger?" "Danny, if the colony security finds out we hit a Drakari, we could all be in serious trouble. Please, Dad." Greg looked at his son, then at his daughter, who was now showing Ember pictures of Earth animals on the tablet. Then at the dragon, who was looking at the images with obvious fascination. 2 days, he finally said. "We have 2 days to figure this out before I have to report it. But your mother needs to know tonight. No more secrets from her. Danny nodded, relieved. 2 days wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Ember seemed to understand the tension in the conversation had eased. The dragon settled down, the rigid fear leaving its body. Amy continued chattering about the animals in the pictures, and to everyone's amazement, Ember started making different sounds for different animals, as if trying to learn the words. Greg pulled out his own scanner and began taking non-invasive readings, muttering to himself about biology and evolution. For a moment, it almost felt normal, like his family was just studying another interesting creature from New Haven's ecosystem. But Danny knew it wouldn't last. 2 days wasn't enough time to heal a broken wing. It wasn't enough time to figure out how to protect Ember from what would come next. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Danny wondered what had happened to Ember's people, and whether they were looking for the dragon they had cast out. That evening, Helen Fletcher climbed up to the treehouse. Danny watched his mother's face as she saw Ember for the first time. Unlike his father, she didn't freeze or gasp. She simply stopped moving and stared, her scientific mind clearly working through what she was seeing. "Hello," Helen said softly. She approached slowly, the way she approached any new species. "You're a long way from home." Ember watched her carefully. Danny had learned to read the dragon's body language over the past week. The way Ember's head tilted slightly meant curiosity. The way the scales along the neck flattened meant calm. Helen knelt down and looked directly into Ember's golden eyes. "My husband told me your story. I'm sorry your people hurt you. You're safe here for now." Ember reached for the tablet and began drawing again. This time, the images were more complex. Ember drew 2 groups of dragons, one larger than the other. The larger group had sharp, aggressive postures. The smaller group seemed to be hiding or fleeing. "There's a conflict among your people," Helen said, studying the drawings. "The larger faction wants something. War, maybe? And your group opposed them?" Ember's rumble meant yes. Helen looked at Greg, who had climbed up behind her. "This is exactly what we feared. The Drakari aren't a unified species. They're in the middle of a civil war or political crisis. Which means our 2 destroyed ships might have been caught in the crossfire," Greg added. Danny hadn't thought about it that way. "So maybe the Drakari aren't all hostile? Maybe some of them want peace?" "Maybe," Helen said carefully. "But that makes the situation even more complicated. If we report Ember, the military won't care about internal Drakari politics. They'll just see a potential threat." Amy was sitting next to Ember, braiding the dragon's tail into elaborate patterns. Ember seemed to enjoy the attention, making soft, chirping sounds that Danny had learned meant contentment. "Can't we just keep Ember hidden until the wing heals?" Amy asked. "Then Ember can fly away, and everything goes back to normal." "It's not that simple, sweetie," Helen said. "Ember's ship crashed somewhere in this forest. Eventually someone will find the wreckage, and when they do, they'll start searching for survivors." Greg pulled up a map on his tablet. The storm was severe. The crash site could be anywhere, in 100 square kilometers. If we're lucky, it'll be months before anyone finds it. "And if we're unlucky?" Danny asked. "Days. Maybe hours if they do an aerial survey." That night, the Fletcher family held a secret meeting in the treehouse. It was cramped with all 4 of them plus Ember. But no one wanted to talk about this anywhere else. Helen had brought food for everyone, including some raw fish from the outpost freezer. Ember had sniffed it suspiciously but ended up eating it enthusiastically. Apparently, dragons liked fish. "We need a plan," Helen said. "Greg and I have been talking. We think we should contact Commander Grant ourselves, but on our terms. We present Ember as a refugee, emphasize the intelligence and peaceful behavior, and argue for protective custody instead of imprisonment." "Will Grant listen?" Danny asked. "Lisa Grant is reasonable," Greg said. "She's military, but she's not stupid. If we can convince her that Ember is valuable as a potential bridge to peaceful Drakari factions, she might support us." Ember had been listening quietly to the conversation. The dragon picked up the tablet and drew furiously for several minutes. When Ember turned the screen around, everyone leaned in to look. The drawing showed a dragon that looked like Ember, standing between a group of humans and a group of dragons. Above the image, Ember had written symbols in what must have been the Drakari language. Below, in careful, shaky letters, Ember had written human words, "I can help." "You've been teaching it to write?" Helen asked, amazed. "A little," Danny admitted. "Ember learns really fast." Helen stared at the message. "This changes everything. If Ember can communicate in writing, that's proof of intelligence and peaceful intent. That's exactly what we need." Over the next 2 days, Helen spent hours with Ember, documenting everything. She recorded videos of Ember drawing, writing, and responding to questions. She took biological samples that Ember allowed her to collect. She built a case that Ember was not just an animal or a threat, but a sapient being, seeking asylum. Greg worked on translating the Drakari symbols Ember drew. With Ember's help, he started building a basic dictionary. The Drakari language was complex, with symbols that combined sounds and concepts in ways that human languages didn't. But Ember was patient, teaching them slowly. Amy appointed herself as Ember's cultural ambassador. She showed the dragon human games, music, and art. Ember seemed particularly fascinated by music. When Amy played a recording of classical guitar, Ember's scales shimmered and changed color in response to different notes. Danny continued his role as Ember's primary caretaker. He changed bandages, brought food, and spent hours just sitting with the dragon, keeping Ember company. Sometimes they communicated with words and drawings. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. On the morning of the 3rd day, Helen made her decision. "We're going to talk to Commander Grant today. We've gathered enough evidence. The longer we wait, the worse it looks that we hid Ember." Danny felt his stomach drop. What if she doesn't listen? What if she takes Ember away? Then we'll deal with that, Helen said firmly. But I don't think Lisa will be unreasonable. Not when she sees what we've documented. They went to the outpost together, leaving Amy with Ember. Danny insisted on coming, even though his parents thought he should stay away. This was his dragon. He'd found Ember, saved Ember. He wasn't going to abandon Ember now. Commander Lisa Grant's office was in the security building, a squat structure made of reinforced concrete. She was a tall woman, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been in the Colonial Marines for 20 years before taking this position. Helen knocked on the door. Grant looked up from her desk, surprised to see the whole Fletcher family. "Dr. Fletcher, what can I do for you?" "We need to talk, Lisa. In private. And you'll want to sit down for this." Grant's eyes narrowed. "That sounds serious. Come in." They filed into her office. Grant closed the door and activated a privacy field that blocked sound from leaving the room. "All right. What's this about?" Helen pulled out her tablet and showed Grant the videos. "A week ago, my son found a Drakari in his treehouse. It had crashed during the storm and was badly injured. Instead of reporting it, we've been caring for it and studying it." Grant's hand moved toward the alarm on her desk, but she stopped when she saw the videos of Ember writing and drawing. "Is this real?" Grant asked quietly. "Completely real. The Drakari is intelligent, peaceful, and seeking refuge. It was cast out by its own people for opposing a war faction. Commander, this could be our first chance at peaceful contact with the Drakari species." Grant watched the videos 3 times in complete silence. Then she leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. "You do realize you've violated about 15 different colonial regulations? Not to mention harboring what's officially classified as a hostile alien." "Yes," Helen said, "but we'd do it again. This is too important." Grant looked at Danny. Yes, ma'am. In my treehouse. It was dying. I couldn't just leave it. And it never tried to hurt you? Never. Ember let me treat the wounds. Ember's been gentle with my whole family. Ember? That's what I named it. I mean, that's what I call them. Grant drummed her fingers on her desk, thinking. Finally. She stood up. I need to see this dragon myself. Right now. And Dr. Fletcher, you'd better hope your assessment is correct. Because if that thing is dangerous, we're all going to have a serious problem. They drove to the treehouse in Grant's vehicle, a heavy military transport with reinforced plating. Danny sat in the back, his heart pounding. Amy was still at the treehouse with Ember. He hoped his sister had enough sense to keep the dragon calm. When they arrived, Grant ordered her driver to stay with the vehicle. She wore a sidearm, but didn't draw it. That was a good sign, Danny thought. They climbed the ladder, with Grant going first. Danny heard Amy's voice from above. It's okay, Ember. These are friends. Well, I think they're friends. Grant's head appeared above the floor level. She stopped climbing for a moment, taking in the sight of Ember and Amy sitting together, with Amy braiding colored strings into Ember's scales like jewelry. Commander Grant, Amy said brightly, would you like to meet Ember? Grant climbed into the treehouse and stood there, a trained military officer face to face with what was supposed to be humanity's enemy. Ember looked back at her, golden eyes calm and curious. Slowly, Grant removed her sidearm and set it down on the floor, out of reach. It was a gesture of trust. Hello, Ember, Grant said. I'm Lisa Grant. I'm in charge of security for this colony. These people tell me you're not a threat. They tell me you want peace. I'd like to believe them. Can you help me understand? Ember picked up the tablet and began to draw. Not the simple pictures from before, but something more detailed. A map of the stars, showing two systems. Lines connecting them. And in the middle, a small figure that looked like Ember, reaching out toward both. Below the drawing, Ember wrote in careful letters. Grant stared at the message for a long time. Then she looked at Helen. I need to report this to Admiral Boyd. This is way above my authority level. I know, Helen said. But you'll support us? You'll advocate for Ember? No. Grant looked at the dragon again. At the careful writing and the hopeful expression in those golden eyes. Yes, I'll support you. But Dr. Fletcher, if this goes wrong, it won't just be your career on the line. It could be war. I know, Helen said. But if we don't try, war is inevitable anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Admiral Karen Boyd arrived on New Haven 3 days later. She came on a fast military courier ship, C-2, Admiral Karen Boyd, which told Danny everything he needed to know about how seriously the Colonial Command was taking this situation. Admirals didn't leave their flagships for minor issues. Commander Grant had moved Ember to a secure facility at the outpost, a large room that had been designed as a conference center, but was now converted into temporary quarters. It wasn't a prison cell, exactly, but armed guards stood outside the door. Danny was allowed to visit, but only with supervision. Ember didn't like the new space. The dragon paced constantly, wings twitching with anxiety. The injured wing was healing well, but Ember still couldn't fly. Being trapped inside walls instead of the open treehouse made everything worse. Danny sat with Ember as much as he could, bringing books and his tablet, trying to keep the dragon calm. Amy came too, though their parents limited her visits. She taught Ember how to play simple card games, which the dragon picked up surprisingly quickly. On the day Admiral Boyd arrived, the whole Fletcher family was summoned to the conference room. Ember was already there, sitting on a specially reinforced chair that Grant's people had built. The dragon looked small and vulnerable, surrounded by military personnel. Admiral Boyd was a short woman with iron gray hair and dark eyes that seemed to see right through people. She wore her uniform perfectly, every medal and decoration in exact position. She studied Ember for a full minute before speaking. "So this is the Drakari," Boyd said. Her voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "I've read Commander Grant's report. I've watched all the videos. And I still find it hard to believe I'm looking at a member of the species that destroyed the Venture and the Pathfinder." Ember's head lowered, and Danny saw shame in those golden eyes. The dragon picked up the tablet and wrote, "I am sorry. My people did wrong. Some of us tried to stop war. We failed." Boyd's expression didn't change. "Why should I believe you? How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick? You could be a spy, gathering information about our defenses." Helen stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, that doesn't make sense. If the Drakari wanted a spy, they wouldn't send someone with a half-destroyed ship and critical injuries. They wouldn't send someone who immediately sought help from a human child. Ember is exactly what we think, a refugee from internal conflict." "Maybe," Boyd said. "Or maybe they knew we'd think exactly that. Maybe the injuries were self-inflicted to gain our sympathy." Danny couldn't stay quiet anymore. "That's not true. I saw Ember when I first found them. They were barely alive. No one would hurt themselves that much just to trick us." Boyd turned her sharp gaze on Danny. "You're the one who found it?" "Yes, ma'am, in my treehouse. And Ember isn't an it. Ember is a person. That remains to be seen." Boyd walked closer to Ember, studying the dragon from different angles. "Can you speak our language? Or only write it?" Ember opened their mouth and tried to make human sounds. What came out was a garbled mix of hisses and clicks that might have been attempting to form words. The dragon's face showed frustration. "Our vocal anatomy is different," Helen explained. "The Drakari can understand spoken human language, but their throat structure can't reproduce most of our sounds. Written communication works better." Boyd nodded slowly. "Commander Grant tells me you've been teaching it our language. How much can it understand?" Almost everything at a basic level," Greg said. "Ember learns extremely fast. In just over a week, we've built a vocabulary of several hundred words. The dragon understands complex concepts like politics, ethics, and diplomacy." "Show me," Boyd commanded. Helen pulled up a series of test questions on the screen. They were moral scenarios, the kind designed to test reasoning and values. A ship is sinking, and you can only save 5 people, but there are 10. Who do you save? Ember answered each question carefully, writing out explanations. The dragon's answers showed sophistication and nuance. When asked about the sinking ship, Ember wrote, "Save children first. They have most future. Then save those who can help others survive. But try to find way to save all. Giving up is last choice." Boyd read each answer, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sat down across from Ember. "All right. Let's say I believe you're genuine. Let's say you really are running from your own people. Tell me about this war. Tell me why you're here." Ember drew for several minutes, creating a detailed map of Drakari society. There were multiple clans, each with their own territory and philosophy. The largest clan, which Ember labeled as Ashwing, had grown aggressive. Their leader, a dragon named Skorath, wanted to unite all Drakari under his rule and expand their territory. Other clans resisted. Ember's clan, the Starcrest, believed in the old ways, in peace and knowledge. When the human ships entered Drakari space, Skorath saw an opportunity. He destroyed the ships and used the incident to rally the clans, claiming humans were invaders who needed to be driven out. Ember had spoken against this in the clan council. The dragon had argued that the human ships were explorers, not warriors, and that destroying them was murder. For this, Ember was declared broken, a term that meant stripped of honor and cast out. Skorath sent hunters, Ember wrote. I escaped in small ship. They damaged it. I crashed here. I came because I hope humans will listen. If you know truth, maybe war can stop. Boyd leaned back in her chair. That's a nice story. But even if it's true, what can one dragon do? You can't stop a war by yourself. No, Ember wrote. But I can be bridge. I can show both sides that peace is possible. I can prove not all Drakari want war. And what do you want from us? Ember thought for a moment before writing. Help me heal. Help me contact Starcrest clan. Help me show Skorath is wrong. I do not ask you to fight my people. I ask you to help me save them. The room was quiet. Danny watched Admiral Boyd's face, trying to read her decision. The Admiral looked at Ember, then at the Fletcher family, then at Commander Grant. This could backfire spectacularly, Boyd finally said. If I take you back to Drakmir, and this is a trap, I'll be starting the very war we're trying to avoid. But if you don't try, Helen said, war is coming anyway. Ember is offering us a chance at peaceful contact. We may never get another opportunity like this. Boyd stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ironwood forest. I've been in the service for 30 years. I've seen what war does. I've lost friends to it. If there's even a small chance this dragon is telling the truth, I have to take it. She turned back to face them. Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking Ember back to my ship, the Constellation. We're going to Drakmir, but we're not going in blind. We'll approach carefully, we'll scan for threats, and at the first sign of danger, we leave. Understood? Ember's whole body seemed to light up with hope. The dragon wrote quickly, Thank you. I will not fail you. You'd better not, Boyd said. Then she looked at the Fletcher family. I need a cultural liaison. Someone who knows Ember, who the dragon trusts. Dr. Fletcher, I want you on this mission. Helen nodded without hesitation. I'll go. Me too, Danny said immediately. Absolutely not, his father said at the same time. Danny, this is a military operation into hostile space, Boyd said. It's not a field trip. But Ember trusts me, Danny argued. I found them. I saved them. If you want Ember to feel safe and be able to help, I should come too. He has a point, Commander Grant said quietly. The dragon responds best to the boy and his sister. Having them there might help keep Ember calm in stressful situations. Boyd looked at Grant like she'd suggested bringing pets on a combat mission. You want me to take children into a potential war zone? I want you to take the people who have built trust with our only link to a peaceful faction of Drakari, Grant replied. Sometimes, the right tool for a job isn't the one you'd expect. I want to go too, Amy announced. Everyone had forgotten she was in the room. She stood up from where she'd been sitting quietly in the corner. Ember is my friend. Friends don't let friends go into scary places alone. Greg looked like he wanted to forbid it, but Helen put a hand on his arm. If I'm going, and Danny's going, we keep the family together. Amy comes too, and so do you. I'm a soil scientist, Greg protested. What use would I be on a diplomatic mission? You're a father, Helen said. Admiral Boyd rubbed her temples like she was getting a headache. This is the strangest mission briefing I've ever been part of. Fine. The Fletcher family comes. But you follow my orders exactly. No questions. No arguments. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Clear? Clear, they all said together. Boyd looked at Ember one more time. We leave in 3 days. That gives your wing time to heal a bit more, and gives me time to brief my crew. Let's hope we're not all making the biggest mistake of our lives. Ember wrote one more message and held it up for everyone to see. This is not mistake. This is hope. Danny looked at the dragon who had changed his life, and he believed it. They were doing the right thing. They had to be. Because the alternative, the idea that this might fail and start a war, was too terrible to imagine. Over the next 3 days, the outpost became a flurry of preparation. Admiral Boyd's crew prepared the Constellation for a diplomatic mission that might turn into a combat situation. They loaded extra weapons, reinforced shields, and programmed multiple escape routes. Helen worked with Ember on communication protocols, building a more extensive vocabulary, and teaching the dragon about human diplomatic customs. Greg tried to learn everything he could about Dracari biology from the samples Helen had collected. Danny and Amy simply spent time with Ember, keeping their friend calm and hopeful. On the morning they were scheduled to leave, Danny stood in his treehouse one last time. It looked empty without Ember there. He thought about that first night, seeing a dying dragon and making the choice to help instead of run. It seemed like a simple choice at the time. Now, it had become something much bigger. Amy climbed up and sat beside him. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yeah," Danny admitted. "Are you?" "A little. But mostly excited. We're going to see another world, Danny. We're going to see where dragons come from. Or we're going to get blown up by hostile aliens." "Maybe both," Amy said cheerfully. "Either way, it'll be an adventure." Danny had to smile. His sister's optimism was sometimes annoying, but right now, it was exactly what he needed. They climbed down together and headed to the landing pad, where the shuttle waited to take them up to the Constellation. Ember was already aboard, secured in a specially modified compartment. Their parents were doing final checks on their equipment. Commander Grant met them at the shuttle. "Good luck, Fletcher family. Bring our dragon home safe." "We will," Danny promised. As the shuttle lifted off, Danny looked down at New Haven, at the ironwood forests, and the small outpost that was his home. He wondered if he'd see it again. Then he thought about Ember, about golden eyes full of hope, and he knew that whatever happened next, they had to try. 2 worlds hung in the balance. And somehow, a 12-year-old boy and a broken dragon were the key to saving them both. The Constellation was bigger than Danny had imagined. The military vessel stretched nearly 300 meters long, with heavy armor plating and weapon systems that looked like they could destroy a small moon. Admiral Boyd ran a tight ship. Every crew member moved with purpose, and the corridors were spotless. Ember had a special compartment near the medical bay. It was large enough for the dragon to move around, with reinforced walls and a viewing window so the crew could monitor their passenger. Danny visited as soon as they were allowed to move around the ship. Ember sat near the window, looking out at the stars. The dragon's scales were dim, which Danny had learned meant sadness or worry. "Hey," Danny said softly as he entered. "How are you doing?" Ember turned and made a soft chirping sound. The dragon picked up the tablet that Helen had left in the room and wrote, "Scared. Going home. But home is not safe anymore. We won't let anyone hurt you," Danny promised. "Admiral Boyd has a whole warship. And my mom won't let anything bad happen either. What if Skorath finds us first? What if he attacks before we reach Starcrest?" It was a good question, and Danny didn't have a good answer. He sat down next to Ember, leaning against the dragon's warm side. "Then, we'll figure it out together. That's what friends do." Ember's scales brightened slightly. The dragon wrote, "I never had human friend before. Never thought I would. I never had a dragon friend before either. Guess we're both learning new things." Amy burst into the room carrying a deck of cards. "Ember, want to play another game? I brought the cards with the pretty pictures." Over the next 2 days, the ship traveled through hyperspace toward Drakmir. The crew prepared constantly, running drills and checking systems. Helen spent hours with Ember, learning more about Dracari culture and politics. Greg mostly stayed in their quarters, looking nervous and out of place among the military personnel. On the third day, Admiral Boyd summoned everyone to the bridge for a briefing. The bridge was the nerve center of the ship, filled with screens and control stations. A large display showed their current position relative to Drakmare. "We'll be dropping out of hyperspace in 6 hours," Boyd announced. "When we do, we'll be at the edge of Drakari space. Our scans show significant military activity near the planet. At least 20 vessels. Possibly more." "That's Skorath's fleet," Ember wrote on the tablet. "He has gathered many clans to his cause." "Can we avoid them?" Helen asked. Boyd shook her head. "Not if we want to reach your Starcrest friends. According to Ember, they're hiding in the mountain territories on the far side of the planet. We'll have to get past Skorath's patrols." "What if they detect us?" Greg asked nervously. "Then we talk fast. Or we run faster." Boyd looked at Ember. "You said some clans are neutral. Which ones?" Ember drew a quick map of the clan territories. Windcaller clan values tradition. They have not joined Skorath but have not opposed him. Cloudreach clan trades with everyone. They might listen. Ironscale clan is warriors, but they respect courage. They might respect you for coming here. "Might isn't very reassuring," Boyd muttered. She studied the map. "All right. Here's the plan. We'll approach slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions. Ember, you'll need to send a message in your language, explaining who you are and why you've returned." Ember's scales flickered with anxiety, but the dragon nodded. The next 6 hours crawled by. Danny couldn't sit still. He walked the corridors, checked on Ember 3 times, and drove his parents crazy with questions. Amy handled the stress better, spending time in the observation deck, watching the stars blur past. Finally, the announcement came over the ship's speakers. "All hands. Prepare for hyperspace exit. Secure all loose items. Battle stations on standby." Danny felt his stomach lurch as the ship dropped back into normal space. Through the observation windows, he saw a new star system appear. And there, hanging in the darkness like a jewel, was Drakmare. The planet was beautiful. Swirls of purple and blue clouds covered the surface, with landmasses that glowed faintly even from space. Danny realized the glow came from massive crystal formations that covered the mountains. "Detecting multiple vessels," the sensor officer announced. 23 ships total. Configuration matches Drakari military designs. "Put it on screen," Boyd ordered. The main display shifted to show the Drakari ships. They looked organic, like they'd been grown, rather than built. Their hulls had a scaled texture, and they moved through space with a fluid grace that human ships couldn't match. "They're beautiful," Helen whispered. "They're also arming weapons," the tactical officer reported. 6 ships breaking formation to intercept us. "Bring Ember to the bridge," Boyd commanded. Now, 2 crew members ran to get the dragon. Meanwhile, the Drakari ships moved closer. They were smaller than the constellation, but faster, circling like predators. "Incoming transmission," communications reported. "Audio only. It's in their language." The bridge filled with a sound like thunder mixed with music. It was harsh and beautiful at the same time. The translation software worked frantically to convert it to human language. "Unknown vessel. You have entered Drakari space. State your purpose, or be destroyed." Ember arrived on the bridge, moving quickly despite the still healing wing. The dragon went straight to the communication station and began making sounds, speaking in the native language. The translation appeared on screen as Ember spoke. "This is Ember of Clan Starcrest. I return from exile with human friends who seek peace. I request audience with the clan council. Under ancient law." There was a long silence. Then a new voice came through, deeper and more menacing than the first. "Ember, you were declared broken and exiled. You have no rights under ancient law. You are dead to us." Ember's whole body trembled. But the dragon kept speaking. I invoke the right of return. Any Drakari may seek redemption by performing a deed of great worth. I have done this. I bring humans who seek peace, who saved my life and ask nothing in return. This proves not all humans are enemies. This proves there is another path than war. Another long pause. Danny held his breath. The one who speaks is Skorath, Ember wrote quickly on the tablet. War Chief. Most dangerous. The voice came back. You bring our enemies to our home. This is not redemption. This is treason. I will destroy your human friends, and then I will destroy you properly this time. The Drakari ships moved into attack formation. Admiral, they're powering weapons, Tactical reported. Boyd's hand hovered over the defense controls. If she fired first, it would be war. If she didn't, they might all die. Danny looked at Ember. The dragon's eyes were wide with fear. They had come all this way, risked everything, and it was falling apart. Then Amy did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. She pushed past the adults and stood in front of the communications console. Wait, she shouted. Don't shoot. We're not your enemies. We're just a family who wanted to help a friend. Amy, get back, Greg hissed, reaching for her. But Amy kept talking, her young voice carrying through the translation system. My brother found Ember dying in his treehouse. We could have let Ember die. We could have called our military and had Ember locked up. But we didn't because Ember needed help. And helping people who need help is what good people do. Isn't that what you do too? Don't you help each other? The Drakari ships stopped moving. Amy kept going. Ember says there's going to be a war. But Ember doesn't want that. We don't want that. Nobody wants that, except the people who are too scared to try something different. We came here because we're not scared. We came here because one dragon had the courage to ask for help, and we had the courage to give it. Doesn't that mean anything? The silence stretched so long that Danny thought his heart would explode. Then a different voice came through the speakers. This one was older, gentler. I am Varaxis of Clan Starcrest. We have been listening. Young human child, your words carry wisdom beyond your years. Skorath, the child speaks truth. This human vessel came here openly, broadcasting peace. They did not attack. They saved one of our own when they had no reason to. This deserves recognition. It deserves nothing, Skorath snarled. Humans are deceivers. Then let the council decide, Varaxis said. Ancient law says any Drakari may bring a matter before the council if it concerns the survival of our people. This concerns us all. Let them speak. More voices joined in, arguing in the Drakari language too fast for the translator to keep up. Danny watched Ember's face as the dragon listened. He couldn't read the expression, but Ember's scales had brightened. Finally, Skorath spoke again. His voice was filled with rage, but also something else. Acceptance, maybe, or at least acknowledgement of defeat in this moment. Very well. The humans may come to the crown of ash. The council will hear them. But if they speak falsely, if they show any sign of treachery, they will die. All of them. And Ember, you will die with them. The transmission cut off. The Drakari ships moved aside, forming a corridor toward the planet. Boyd let out a breath she'd been holding. Well, that was close. She looked at Amy. Young lady, that was incredibly dangerous and incredibly foolish. It also probably saved all our lives. I can't decide whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. Amy grinned. Can I have both? Despite the tension, several people on the bridge laughed. Ember moved close to Amy and touched the girl's head gently with one clawed hand. You are brave. Ember wrote on the tablet. Braver than many warriors. We're really going down there? Greg asked, looking terrified. We are, Boyd confirmed. Because apparently, a 9-year-old girl just negotiated our way into the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. She looked at Helen. Your family is either brilliant or insane. Possibly both, Helen admitted. As the constellation began its descent toward Drakmir, Danny looked at his sister with new respect. Amy had always seemed like just an annoying little kid. But she'd stood up to hostile aliens without hesitation and found exactly the right words to say. Maybe courage came in unexpected packages. Ember stood at the window, watching the planet grow larger. Danny moved beside the dragon. Are you ready? He asked. Ember wrote, No, but we go anyway. That is what courage is. Doing what must be done, even when afraid. Danny nodded. That made sense. He was terrified of what came next. But they'd come too far to turn back now. The ship descended through purple clouds toward the surface of an alien world, carrying the hopes of 2 species toward an uncertain future. The crown of ash was unlike anything Danny had ever seen. The massive volcanic crater stretched for miles, with walls of black stone that rose toward the purple sky. At the center sat a natural amphitheater formed from cooling lava, with ledges and platforms at different heights where hundreds of dragons perched. The constellation had landed in a valley controlled by Starcrest clan. Varaxis himself had come to meet them, an ancient dragon whose scales had faded to pale silver with age. He was twice the size of Ember, with wings that looked powerful despite his obvious age. Welcome to Drakmir, Varaxis said through the translation device Helen had built. His voice was deep and kind. I am sorry it took exile and injury to bring us together. That shame belongs to us, not to you. Ember bowed low before the elder dragon. Varaxis touched Ember's head gently with one claw, a gesture that seemed to mean forgiveness or acceptance. The council meets at sunset, Varaxis explained. That gives us 3 hours. I must warn you, Skorath has gathered support from many clans. He speaks of human aggression and the need for unity through strength. Convincing the council will not be easy. What do we need to do? Helen asked. Speak truth, show respect, and prove that peace serves us better than war. Varaxis looked at the Fletcher family with intelligent eyes. Ember tells me you saved a broken dragon when you had every reason to fear or hate us. That story is powerful. Tell it well. 43. Tell it well. 43. Young dragons from Starcrest clan approached cautiously, curious about the humans. Amy immediately wanted to meet them, and Helen allowed it under careful supervision. The young dragons were about Amy's size, with brighter scales than the adults. They chirped and clicked at each other, trying to communicate across the language barrier. One young dragon, barely bigger than a large dog, approached Danny. Its scales were bright blue, with silver highlights. The dragon tilted its head, studying him. Hello, Danny said softly. The young dragon made a sound and touched Danny's hand with its nose. Then it spread its wings, showing them off proudly. Ember rumbled something in the Drakari language. The young dragon chirped back, and Ember translated on the tablet. This is Spark, my cousin's child. Spark says humans are smaller than expected, but seem nice. Tell Spark I think dragons are amazing, Danny said. The interaction drew more young dragons. Soon, Amy and Danny were surrounded by curious youngsters, all wanting to see the strange visitors. The adult dragons watched carefully, but didn't interfere. This is good, Varaxis said to Helen. The young have not yet learned to hate. They see only new friends. As sunset approached, the Starcrest dragons led the human delegation toward the Crown of Ash. Admiral Boyd had brought a small security team, but they'd left their heavy weapons behind as a show of good faith. The walk took nearly an hour, following mountain paths that wound through crystal formations. When they reached the rim of the crater, Danny's breath caught. Hundreds of dragons filled the amphitheater below, organized by clan. Each group had different scale colors and patterns. Some were massive, larger than the constellation. Others were smaller and sleeker. All of them turned to watch as the humans descended. Skorath sat at the center of the council circle. He was enormous, with scales like black iron and eyes that glowed red in the fading light. Scars covered his body, each one a mark of battle. When he saw Ember, his lip curled to show teeth as long as Danny's arm. "The Broken One returns," Skorath's voice boomed through the crater, "and brings vermin to defile our sacred place." Varaxis moved forward. "Skorath, you forget yourself. The humans come under flag of peace. Ancient law protects them. Ancient law protects Drakari, not invaders." "We're not invaders," Admiral Boyd said firmly. The translation device carried her words to every dragon present. "We came because Ember asked for our help. We came because we believe peace is possible." "Peace?" Skorath laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Humans destroyed our scouting parties. Humans invade our space with warships. And you speak of peace?" Helen stepped forward. "We destroyed nothing. 2 of our exploration ships entered your space by accident. They were unarmed science vessels. Your forces destroyed them, without warning or communication. 63 humans died, including civilians and children." A murmur went through the dragon clans. Several looked uncomfortable. "They invaded our space during a sacred time," Skorath countered. "They violated our laws. Laws we didn't know existed," Helen said. "Because you never tried to communicate with us. You attacked first, and never gave us a chance to explain or apologize." An older dragon from one of the neutral clans spoke up. "This is true, Skorath. The humans had no way to know our customs. Perhaps their presence was innocent mistake, not deliberate insult. Or perhaps they test our defenses," Skorath said. "Perhaps they search for weakness before launching full invasion." "That's not true," Danny said. His voice was small compared to the dragons, but it carried in the quiet crater. "We didn't even know you existed until a few years ago. We're explorers, not conquerors. We just want to learn about the universe." Skorath's red eyes fixed on Danny. "A human child speaks in our council? This is insult." "No," Varaxis said. "This is the child who found Ember dying and chose compassion over fear. The child has earned the right to speak." Ember moved to stand beside Danny. The dragon's voice rang out in the native language, speaking rapidly. The translation device struggled to keep up. "I was broken and cast out. I crashed on a human world. This child found me and could have killed me, could have captured me, could have let me die. Instead, he brought water. He brought medicine. He sat with me through the night, so I would not be alone in my pain. His family risked their safety to protect me. They risked their careers to help me. They risked war to bring me home. This is not the behavior of enemies. This is the behavior of good people." Amy pushed through the adults to stand with Danny and Ember. "My brother saved Ember because that's what you do when someone needs help. It doesn't matter if they're different or scary or from another world. If someone's hurt and you can help, you help. Isn't that what being good means?" Several dragons made sounds of agreement. Skorath's expression darkened. "Pretty words from younglings who know nothing of war or survival," he said. "The humans seek to weaken us with talk of peace while they build their forces. We seek to avoid unnecessary war," Admiral Boyd said. "But make no mistake, if you attack human space, we will defend ourselves. We have weapons you haven't seen, technology you don't understand. A war between our peoples would be devastating for both sides." "Is that a threat?" Skorath growled. "It's a fact. I've been a soldier for 30 years. I've seen what war does. It destroys everything, even the winners. If there's any chance to avoid that destruction, we have to take it. Varaxis rose to his full height. Skorath speaks of unity through strength, but I remember the old ways, before we turned inward and isolated ourselves. We once believed that strength comes from wisdom, from alliances, from understanding those different from us. This human family embodies those old values. They showed courage by coming here. They showed compassion by helping Ember. They showed wisdom by seeking peace instead of revenge. The old ways made us weak, Skorath said. Look at Ember. Broken. Exiled. This is what softness creates. I am not broken, Ember said, speaking in halting but clear Drakari. The dragon's voice was strong now. I am here. I flew through space. I survived hunters. I found allies. I returned home. This is not broken. This is strong. The young dragons who had met Amy and Danny earlier chirped their agreement. Their parents looked uncertain, torn between old fears and new possibilities. A dragon from Cloudreach clan spoke. Perhaps we should test these humans. See if their words match their actions. What do you propose? Another elder asked. A challenge. Let them prove their courage and honor in a way we understand. Skorath's eyes gleamed. Yes, a challenge. If they truly seek peace, let them face me in single combat. When I crush them, we will know they are weak and unworthy. That's not fair, Amy shouted. You're huge. You could step on any of us. Then perhaps peace is not possible, Skorath said with satisfaction. But Ember stepped forward. I accept. I will fight for the humans. I will prove that peace is not weakness. Your wing is barely healed, Danny protested. You can't fight him. I must, Ember wrote quickly on the tablet. This is the only way. Varaxis looked troubled. Skorath, this is not appropriate. Ember is still recovering from injuries. Ember claimed to be strong, not broken. If that is true, Ember can fight. If not, then Ember's words mean nothing. The council murmured, considering. Danny felt panic rising. Ember couldn't fight Skorath. The war chief was twice Ember's size and covered in battle scars. Admiral Boyd leaned close to Helen. We need to stop this. But Helen was staring at Ember with a strange expression. Wait, look at Ember's scales. Danny looked. Ember's scales were glowing brighter than he'd ever seen them, shifting through colors like a sunset. The dragon stood tall, wings spread despite the injuries. Ember looked at Danny and wrote one word. Trust. The challenge was set. At dawn, Ember and Skorath would face each other in the traditional way. The winner would determine whether the council heard the humans' full case for peace or whether they were expelled from Drakmir forever. That night, the Fletcher family stayed with the Starcrest clan. Ember was quiet, preparing mentally for what was to come. Danny couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that first night in the treehouse, when Ember had been so small and helpless. Amy climbed into his sleeping bag with him. Ember will win, she whispered. I know it. How can you know that? Because Ember has something Skorath doesn't. Ember has us. Ember has friends who believe in them. That makes you stronger than any muscles or teeth. Danny hoped his sister was right, because if she wasn't, they'd come all this way just to watch their friend die. Dawn came too quickly. The dragons gathered at the Crown of Ash again. Skorath stood in the center of the circle, massive and confident. Ember entered from the opposite side, looking impossibly small by comparison. The rules were explained. The fight would continue until one dragon submitted or could no longer fight. No outside interference was allowed. Danny, Amy, and their parents stood with Admiral Boyd at the edge of the circle. Danny's hands were clenched so tight, his nails dug into his palms. Skorath roared, a sound that shook the ground. Ember answered with a clear, high note that rang through the crater like a bell. The battle began. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.